The 57 Chrysler. Such a magnificent car for styling. As you know, I've been putting a new wiring harness in this, and I've finished that, and it occurs to me that all I've done is bring it up to 1957 standards, and that really isn't that good. In 57, they put a circuit breaker for the headlights, one for the wipers. They put one for power seats, if you had power seats, and one for power windows, if you had power windows. But other than that, nothing else gets any kind of protection. There's no fusible link. There are no fuses. I got to thinking, I should do something about that. So I'm going to go two ways. One way is I'm going to go add just a conventional inline fuse, which is a fairly quick and easy addition, and that'll give me some protection. I might not know what the offending device is that blows the fuse, but at least I have protection. And this will be a fairly quick addition. The other way I'm going to do it is just to take that concept and go nuts with it and add the fuse block to it, similar to what they came out in, I think, 1960. I'll be adding a 63 style fuse box. And that will give me 5 or 6 different circuits that I can connect to different accessories, and I'll end up getting protection that way. Plus, it'll tell me which one is giving me a problem. That will be, of course, a whole lot more work. This is the wiring diagram for the 57. And what we're going to do for fuses, off of the ignition switch accessory post comes, well, the diagram shows 2 wires. There's actually just 1 wire. And then these other wires tap into it. But we're going to take that inline fuse and we're going to add it from here to here. That's the same place that we're going to also add the fuse block. And the reason we're doing that is, you see, from the accessory, we feed the temperature gauge. We feed, that's the circuit breaker for the wipers. This is the, not only the backup light switch, but it also feeds the neutral switch. I mean, the switch that's on the push buttons, that you push the neutral button in order to crank. Off here we also go to the fuel gauge, and from the fuel gauge we power the turn signal flasher. Plus, if you have options such as a rear window defogger or a power antenna, they will come off of these gauges. So if you're going to install the single fuse to protect the accessory circuit, you rig up something like this. This is the accessory terminal on the ignition switch to your fuse, and then this end just picks up the black wire with the flag that you took off of here, it would be hanging down somewhere right around here, you know. Connect that end as you see fit, and you're done. This is a spare 57 gauge. Never mind its condition. What I want to show you on the back side, let's take the fuel gauge. You see this device here? Call it a fence. Well, one of the wires from the accessory that we were just pointing out goes to this fence, and that powers the gauge. Plus, you can put other accessories on here, such as the rear window defroster or the power antenna. This standalone is the wire that will go to the fuel sender. And gauge, same story, different verse. It also has that four-posted fence. You power the gauge by picking up one of those terminals, and then you can power other accessories off the other ones. And that standalone is the post where you run the wire out to the sending unit. Up under the dash, it's really hard to see these things, but that's how it works. That's the ammeter over there, and all they do is they pass a wire through this hoop, and it picks up the current, and there's your oil pressure gauge. This is the backside of a 59 gauge. Similar, but a little different to the 57. In there, you can see how they have this wire going off to the sending unit, and in this case, this is the power wire, and then they've taken another wire here and gone off to power something else. And I guess in this case, they put an inline fuse in here, which, that's a good idea. And there you go, fuel gauge, feed wire coming from the accessory, available terminals, and sender. This is a fuse box off of a 62 Chrysler. And you can see the things that get fused. Here's the back of the box. We'd have to identify which terminals are which. This is a fuse box out of a 64. Same story, different execution. You see, it tells you what it's used for and what fuse. Although, you can use it for anything you want and put whatever fuse in that you want. Now, whereas that one had a bunch of pins, this one's got a bunch of push-on wires. At this point, I'm not sure which one of these I'll use, but boy, nice and compact and everything you need. So this is the back of the 64 fuse box. You see up here in the upper left, there is a gang of 3. And here on the right, there's a gang of 2. Well, if you look at the wiring harness here, you can see that gang of 3 and 2. Q2A and Q, what is that? 3. And Q2A is fed off of the accessory post of the ignition, and Q3 is a direct battery feed, so that the items on Q3 are hot whenever the battery is connected. That X1, it runs it to the cigar lighter. Well, big deal. But it also does things like map lights and things that you expect would always be on. And the clock, which would always be on. Dome and tail, things like that. But you might call Q2A, those 3 over there are switchable, and they're going to be hot whenever the key is on. And you see, like, you run the radio off of that because you don't want the radio running when the key is not on. And let's see, one of those terminals runs to the heater, and so on. So we can use Q2A to power our such things as our instrument cluster, the fuel gauge, and the temperature gauge. So here's the 62 style. Here's the 64. It's probably 63 as well. And when I say 62, I think this came out in 60. I think that's the first year that you got the fuse box. In any case, you can see the difference. And I'm going to go with this style because with this one, that's where you've got to mount your wires. And look at how nice and secure these are. It's going to be a lot harder for anything to accidentally get in there. Whereas, even though they've got terminals on them, you got a little more exposure here. Anyway, pick one, move on, going with the 63-4 style. Here's another look at this 63-64 fuse holder. You can see that on some of the terminals, they have the wires already crimped and attached. So when I cut this, I went to long wires rather than have to get back into here. Because this end that you're looking at is actually the end of the fuse holder on the other side. So these 3 here are the accessory, and they're fed off of this black one. Although you see you can feed it off of here or here or here. Or what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these and I'm going to run it over here and feed one of these 2, and then that opens up 3 more fuse sockets that are switched. This is the terminal that is at the ignition switch posts. You want to call that a flag? I think that's what they call it. So here's the back side of the ignition switch. And these flag terminals, they stick out a little bit. here's a pod, and here's a loose pod. So the ignition switch is going to have to fit in here, and all those wires do too. So this is kind of going to give you an idea of what kind of fit you have in there. So just because I have a fuss budget, this is 10,000 thick Mylar, and it's a great electrical insulator. It's waterproof. You can cut it with scissors, but it's very hard to penetrate. So I just cut a piece and I lay it in here. And so if any of those flags ever think they're going to get close to the housing, which is ground, there you go. Just a little bit of insulation. Quick and easy. 010 Mylar. If you need some, just get a hold of me. Well, this is what you're going to see. Not too many wires. But see that one black wire here on the left? That is your accessory feed wire. It's the only thing coming off of that post down there. And that's what we're going to grab for the fuse box. Those two red wires, one is the battery feed, and one comes from the generator. And that one kind of a blue wire up top, that is your ignition feed. But that's all the more wires come off the ignition switch. So that black wire we just pointed out, there she is, that's that one. And what we're going to do is we're going to come off of the accessory terminal, and we're going to run that as the feed wire to the fuse box right here. Well, in fact, here. Yeah, that will be our wire running from the accessory post, feeding the fuse box, and then from the fuse box, we're going to go and feed the rest of these. This is the original 57 wiring harness that I removed from this car. And so this are the four wires we were just talking about at the ignition switch. The two heavy red wires, battery feed generator, and there, that's the black wire, that's the accessory feed, and you're the ignition. Okay? Just those four wires right there. And I wanted to show them. So you got some big red wires in here, and they go into this loom, and just wanted you to see. Take a close look. See it? Right there, the insulation has worn off of that wire. That is bare. Not something there. Why did that wear off? I don't know. But that's where, and it's not certainly something that you'd want to have exposed in your car. Hard to tell. If that's the black wire that I think it is, then that is your accessory feed, which means that's full 12 volt unfused. Well, this goes to show that these wiring harnesses can wear and surprise you. There's one more wire that we should think about. We're looking at it right there. You see it comes off of the hot post on the starter solenoid and runs along the fender and then in through the firewall. This is it right here. And this is where it goes. Right there. It is the power for your power seats and power windows. See, there is no fuse or circuit breaker from here back to the battery. Downstream you've got circuit breakers, but this is one big hot feed wire, and you should check the health for that. In a perfect world, you'd figure out some way to put a fuse on it back at the solenoid, but that's above my pay grade. And here's the fuse box wired up. It's been tested, everything works. So now I need to bundle these wires, get them nice and tidy, and then we will go mount the box up in here where it's up out of the way, and we can start reassembly. This looks like a quagmire, but it's really not. And flip it over, and there's your fuses. And we're off to the races. Running for the first time in a couple of months. It's charging. Running off oil. There's your oil pressure. And we're just now building heat.